and shows that sort of leadership. Well, how come we're not taking the cue from him?
Good question. Were we all presidents? Although I will also say it's probably hard for him to take a vacation as well in this country. Um, Americans have very low expectations about vacation time compared to the rest of the world. Europeans routinely take 4 to 6 weeks. It's mandated, it's expected, no one has to apologize for it. In fact, they probably have to apologize if they don't take it. But there's been a convergence of forces in the U.S., both in terms of employer pressure, employee fear and concerns about losing their jobs or not moving ahead, and just this general notion of the work ethic that has made it very difficult for Americans to start to think systematically and humanistically about how important taking time off is for regenerating our batteries, being productive workers, being good family members, being involved citizens, all those other aspects of life that not only make us a stronger country, but actually make us better, more productive workers.
You know, the media is complicit in this as well. And if we go back to the president, you said it was hard for him to take a vacation. Part of the reason it's hard is that if he's on the golf course and some international crisis erupts, the first thing that happens is, oh, he's on the golf course, he's not paying attention to the affairs of the world. That's the kind of media reporting that you would not see in Europe and in places where vacation is more expected.
Absolutely, that is so true. And it's not only based on a false premise. In fact, someone's best thinking can be done on a golf course or in a swimming pool or reading a book or in the shower. And in fact, when we assume that if one is not physically at work, concentrating directly on that somehow we're not being productive, that we're not doing the important work we need to do.
Well, vacation shaming certainly has an impact on people's decisions of how much vacation they're going to take. There's also the question of, economically speaking, they can't afford to take a vacation. Do you think people are catching up from the financial downturn, that they want to constantly try to stay ahead and are in a state of fear about taking too much vacation?
Well, in some sense, it would actually be good news if this was simply a matter of recovering from a temporary downturn. But unfortunately, we've seen these trends happening for decades now, and they seem to be intensifying. The downturn certainly didn't help. I'm sure it did contribute to it. But underneath these short-term economic ups and downs, what we have is a growing sense of concern and fear, not simply about moving ahead, but keeping one's job. And that notion that if you can't, it's not simply a matter of how hard are you working, it's being able to prove how hard you're working. So it really is time, I think, for Americans to rethink this notion of work and life. We see this in surveys everywhere. If you ask workers and even managers what their ideal would be, they all espouse a balanced notion that being a good worker also means having a full and integrated life. Unfortunately, when you ask them what they do or what they think their options are, almost everyone says, this is not something that I can achieve. In a better world, this would be my goal. But if I can't achieve this, then my priority has to be able to keep my job, to prove that I'm a good worker.
Now, Kathleen, can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
You're a professor of sociology at NYU, right?
Yes.
Do you have tenure?
I do.
And you still have this problem? Oh my God.
Exactly. In fact, people look at me and say, and don't quite understand it. And part of it is that the process that we have of building careers takes its toll over time, so that by the time that you may achieve a measure of security, if you're lucky to do so in this society, and that's getting harder and harder, you internalize these pressures, these expectations. I don't want to go too far because I love my work, but I'm always amazed when I'm forced, usually by events beyond my control. So, for example, I recently took a brief vacation to attend and oversee my daughter's wedding. And I have to admit, it was hard to go back to work. But once I was there, I realized how important it is for all of us to do that.
Well, I just have to say I prescribe for you, Kathleen Gerson, a year's sabbatical in Tuscany with at least a month of time off there.
Well, thank you very much, and I will tell my employer that right away. But I promise you this, if I do spend that year, I'll probably be sitting at my desk, reading, writing, doing research.
Kathleen Gerson is a professor of sociology at NYU. Have a great summer, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, and you too.
And here's something to take with you today. Strange allies who changed American history. Today marks 95 years since the ratification of the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote. Thanks in part to Harry Burns, 24-year-old member of the Tennessee House of Representatives, who switched his vote after receiving a letter from his mom urging him to be a good boy and support women's right to vote. But just 8 months before, the 18th Amendment was passed, prohibiting the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. The two amendments represent a giant wave of social change 7 decades in the making. Women broadly supported control of drunkenness to prevent poverty, eliminate domestic violence, stabilize households by helping men to hold on to their jobs. Women saw getting the vote as key to making these and other social changes, including improving working conditions for women. The overlap of the suffrage movement and the temperance movement is one of the most curious alignments in U.S. history. Women got the vote, which led directly to modern feminism. Prohibition led to little more than a wave of organized crime and to the 21st Amendment, the repeal of prohibition. Brendan on Facebook writes, and today we celebrate women's right to vote by showing up to vote 40% of the time. Thanks so much for listening. I'm John Hockenberry. This is The Takeaway.
Later today on This American Life, Hyman applied for a job that he found on Craigslist, working for a celebrity hidden camera prank show, and he got it.
I got the job, and they said they couldn't disclose who the celebrity was.
Hyman rolled his eyes.
It's going to be like the other Hilton sister. Is it Vanilla Ice?
Who it turned out to be was so shocking. No kidding. Prepare to have your mind blown. Tonight at 8 on 93.9 FM, WNYC.
WNYC is supported by New York Presbyterian Hospital, working to bring advanced and compassionate care to the New York City community. More information available at nyp.org/amazingthings. New York Presbyterian. Amazing things are happening here.
Stay with us for All Things Considered. That's coming up next here on WNYC. 87 degrees, sunny skies right now in Central Park. It's going to turn mostly cloudy later today. Isolated showers and thunderstorms are possible. Continued humid tonight with lows in the lower 70s. Wednesday, partly sunny. There's a slight chance of showers or thunderstorms. Some of these storms could produce heavy rainfall in the afternoon. It'll be humid with highs in the upper 80s. Thursday should be partly sunny with a chance of showers, slight chance of thunderstorms as well. Continued humid with highs in the mid-80s, and then showers are likely on Friday. Once again, right now in Central Park, it's 87 degrees and it is sunny.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
The Environmental Protection Agency is aiming to cut methane emissions by 40 to 50% over the next 10 years. The new regulations are expected to regulate emissions from natural gas wells. I'm Richard Hake, and this is All Things Considered on WNYC. Drought continues in the west, and in central Washington, instead of help from the government, farmers are using old water rules, making way for a Wild West.
There's no lock on it. Anybody could come and open it up and get whatever water they want.
In Egypt, there's new recent strict anti-terrorism laws imposed by the government. Some human rights groups worry these laws will be used to crack down on political dissent. The Shanghai stock market fell by roughly 6%, another drop in what's proved to be a volatile summer. And musicians in Kenya are calling for a law forcing Kenyan radio stations to play 70% local music.
WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening. This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York.
70% local music.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Another Democratic senator is coming out against the nuclear deal that the Obama administration negotiated with Iran. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports that Robert Menendez of New Jersey says he will vote to kill the nuclear accord.
The former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee says he has many concerns about the nuclear deal with Iran. His biggest complaint is that it doesn't require Iran to dismantle its nuclear infrastructure, but rather mothballs it for 10 years.
If Iran is to acquire a nuclear bomb, it will not have my name on it. It is for these reasons that I will vote to disapprove the agreement, and if called upon, would vote to override the agreement.
His lengthy critique came in a speech in his home state of New Jersey. New York Democrat Chuck Schumer also says he will vote against the deal. President Obama is vowing to veto any legislation that ties his hands on Iran. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
In an unprecedented step to combat climate change, the Environmental Protection Agency is proposing new rules to further limit methane in the air. NPR's Christopher Joyce reports the measures mostly target oil and gas operations.
Methane is the primary constituent of the natural gas used to heat homes and make electricity. It's also one of the main gases that cause global warming. The new EPA proposal would require oil and gas operators to repair leaks in pipelines and pumps. It also directs oil drillers to make sure gas wells don't leak. Recent research by academic and government scientists has revealed that methane is leaking from some industrial sites at much higher rates than previously believed. The EPA says the new rules are part of a plan to cut methane emissions from oil and gas by up to 45% below 2012 levels in the next 10 years. EPA will take comment on its rules for 60 days and hold public hearings before finalizing them. Christopher Joyce, NPR News.
For the first time, women will be counted among the graduates of the Ranger School's grueling combat training program. As NPR's Tom Bowman reports, the Army's Ranger headquarters in Fort Benning, Georgia says 2 women and 94 men passed the 62-day course that tests a person's physical and psychological limits under combat.
The Army's been doing Ranger training since 1950. This is the first class to have women. 19 women started out in the training. 2 of them will graduate on Friday at Fort Benning in Georgia. Even though the women made it through Ranger training, the Army is still trying to decide whether women will be allowed to serve in ground combat jobs. That decision is expected sometime this fall.
NPR's Tom Bowman reporting. Housing starts in the United States are rising. Government says building on single-family houses began last month at the fastest pace since 2007. Before the close, the Dow is down 34 at 17,511. This is NPR.
This is WNYC in New York. I'm Richard Hake. New Jersey and federal political leaders say their meeting to discuss plans to build a new rail tunnel under the Hudson River was productive, and they will work together to get the project funded. Governor Chris Christie, Senators Cory Booker and Robert Menendez, and U.S. Transportation Secretary Anthony Foxx said in a joint statement that they will work to obtain a federal grant for the tunnel. They say they'll also seek other funding for the estimated $14 billion project to add a second tunnel into the city. Meanwhile, Mayor de Blasio says the project is critical to New York City's growth and to its commuters.
The federal government needs to bring more to bear here. There's no two ways about it. Obviously, we're going to need both governors to be a part of the solution as well.
Governor Cuomo did not attend the meeting, calling it premature. The New York Times reports an inmate at Fishkill Correctional Facility was beaten to death by prison guards for acting erratically. 30-year-old Samuel Harrell, an inmate with a history of erratic behavior, died after the encounter with as many as 20 guards in April, reportedly. Times reporter Michael Weinrib co-wrote the story. He says Harrell's death was ruled a homicide, but no officers have been disciplined despite affidavits from 20 prisoners describing what they saw.
Who was wrestled to the ground, who was then handcuffed from behind, who, according to the inmates, was kicked and punched, and at some point was thrown down the stairway.
Weinrib says inmates also reported being threatened by guards and put into solitary confinement for speaking with the family of the victim and their lawyers. The New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association say the union is reviewing all the facts before rushing to judgment. And Mayor de Blasio signed a new law that makes New York City the first place in the country to regulate cooling towers. The large water-filled tanks can breed bacteria and have been linked to the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in the South Bronx, which killed 12 people and sickened 127. City agencies still need to flesh out the law into detailed rules that will specify how frequently building owners must have cooling towers inspected and cleaned. Turning mostly cloudy tonight, some isolated showers and thunderstorms are possible. Continued humid with lows in the lower 70s, and tomorrow partly sunny. Again, the chance of afternoon rainstorms and thunderstorms. Continued humid tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s.
Support for NPR comes from Vonage, offering cloud-based solutions with 40 built-in calling features like video conferencing, virtual mailbox, and work from anywhere at Vonage.com. Vonage, the business of better.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Robert Siegel. Earlier this summer, the White House placed strict limits on carbon dioxide emissions. The target now is methane. The EPA announced today that it wants new restrictions on the amount of methane, or natural gas, released by the energy industry. While drillers also say they want to reduce methane leaks, NPR's Jeff Brady reports they oppose these new regulations.
The White House is clearly showing it's serious about climate change as world leaders prepare to meet on the issue in Paris later this year. Today's new methane proposals are the latest evidence of that. Janet McCabe heads the EPA's office that regulates air pollution. She pointed out during a conference call that while there's more carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, methane is more dangerous.
And also a powerful greenhouse gas that is more than 25 times stronger than carbon dioxide in trapping heat in our atmosphere.
There are a lot of ways methane leaks into the atmosphere when an oil company is producing crude or natural gas. It can happen when a well is being hydraulically fractured or fracked to make it more productive. It can happen when fuel is transported through a pipeline. The new regulations are designed to limit those leaks wherever they happen during the production process. Because methane is an especially damaging greenhouse gas, the White House set a goal based on how much methane was released in 2012. The administration wants to reduce that by up to 45% over the next decade. The EPA's McCabe admits these new rules will get the country only part way toward that goal.
As we move forward, additional opportunities will be identified in order to get to that goal. That doesn't mean that we have every last one of them identified as of this moment.
The EPA has a voluntary program to encourage oil and gas companies to limit methane emissions. The industry prefers that approach over new rules, especially right now when companies have been drilling thousands of new wells across the country into layers of shale deep underground. That has boosted oil and gas production significantly, making the U.S. a major energy player across the globe again.
And these rules that have been proposed now could jeopardize that shale revolution that is underway.
Howard Feldman is a senior director with the American Petroleum Institute. He says the industry already has reduced methane emissions, even as drilling has increased. He argues voluntary measures would work in this case because what's leaking is something companies make money from.
The industry is already incentivized to reduce its emissions from methane. That's the product that we sell. It's very different than a lot of other emissions where it's not what you're interested in.
But the industry hasn't always valued methane. For example, in North Dakota, the drilling boom there has been focused on oil. Natural gas is a byproduct, and since there aren't pipelines to get it out of the state, some of it is just burned on site. The regulations EPA announced today are just proposals. The agency will collect public comments and is expected to issue final rules before President Obama leaves office. Jeff Brady, NPR News.
Farmers across the West are making do with less water than they're used to, but the problem isn't just a lack of rainfall and snowpack. There are also outdated irrigation systems. Going to go now